Mercedes-Benz spent 2.5 billion euros developing the W140 S-Class in 1991. It had 127 individual buttons. Each one cost thousands to develop. Each one worked perfectly for 30 years. Today, that same car would cost 18 billion euros to develop and need to sell for 450,000 euros per unit. But here's the part nobody talks about. People would still buy it. The automotive industry knows there's massive demand for simple, reliable, overbuilt cars. They know we're sick of touchscreens that crash, engines that self-destruct at 100,000 kilometers, and cars that spy on us. So why won't they build them? Because the truth is much darker than incompetence. Today I'm revealing the 10 legendary European cars millions want back, what they'd really cost to build today, and the conspiracy keeping them dead forever. If you've ever wondered why your grandfather's Mercedes still runs after 40 years while your modern car needs software updates to open the trunk, you need to watch every second of this. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because what you're about to learn will change how you see every new car forever. Let's start with the car that refuses to die, the Mercedes W123, specifically the 300D diesel. Between 1976 and 1985, Mercedes built 2.7 million of these tanks. Today, 40 years later, hundreds of thousands are still running. In Morocco, there are taxis with 2 million kilometers. In Germany, they're family heirlooms. This wasn't just a car. It was a promise that engineering could defeat time. The W123 secret was deliberate over-engineering. The door hinges were tested for 1 million open-close cycles. That's opening your door 100 times a day for 27 years. The OM617 diesel engine was so overbuilt that Mercedes engineers admitted it could run twice its rated power without damage. Every component was designed to last not just longer than the warranty, but longer than the owner. Now let's calculate what building this today would cost. Start with the basics. That legendary OM617 engine. To meet Euro 7 emission standards, you'd need selective catalytic reduction and nitrous oxide sensors. Add 12,000 euros. The overlapping steel construction that made it so strong? Illegal now. Pedestrian safety requires crumple zones. Complete redesign, 25,000 euros per unit in development costs. But here's the real killer, the quality standard. The W123 used forged components where others used cast. It had brass bushings where others used plastics. The chrome wasn't just decoration, it was millimeters thick. To build a W123 to original standards today, with modern safety and emissions, the production cost would be 95,000 euros. Mercedes would need to sell it for 140,000 euros just to make their standard margin. And that's the tragedy. People would buy it. There's a documented waiting list of over 50,000 Europeans who've inquired about a heritage reissue W123, but Mercedes makes more profit selling you a 45,000 euro C-Class every 7 years than one 140,000 euro car that lasts forever. The math of planned obsolescence wins every time. The E30 M3 wasn't just a car, it was BMW proving that a practical sedan could be a race car. Built from 1986 to 1991 for homologation, only 17,970 were made. Today, clean examples sell for over 150,000 euros. But what if BMW built a new one, exactly as pure as the original? The E30 M3 weighed just 1,200 kilograms, no power steering on early models, no traction control, no stability management. Just you, a naturally aspirated 2.3-litre four-cylinder and a manual gearbox. Every input was mechanical, immediate, and honest. The steering told you exactly what the front wheels were doing. The throttle cable, an actual cable, delivered exactly what you demanded. Here's what killed cars like this: regulations and expectations. A modern E30 M3 would need to weigh at least 1,500 kilograms just for safety structures. Mandatory stability control adds 15 kilos of sensors and actuators. The modern electrical architecture, required for emergency calling and cybersecurity, adds another 30 kilos of wiring and modules. The original S14 engine? Impossible today. It produced 195 horsepower but would fail every modern emissions test. To make it Euro 7 compliant, you'd need gasoline particulate filters, sophisticated injection systems, and cylinder deactivation. The engine would cost 35,000 euros just to manufacture. The original cost 8,000 euros in today's money. BMW actually studied this. In 2019, their Heritage division calculated the cost of a regulation-compliant E30 M3 continuation model. The verdict? 180,000 euros production cost, 250,000 euros retail price minimum. they'd sell maybe 1,000 worldwide. Meanwhile, the modern M3, weighing 1,800 kilograms and full of electronics, sells 30,000 units annually at higher profit margins. But here's what BMW won't admit. They are terrified of building a simple car again. If they did, and it lasted 30 years like the E3, it would prove that all the complexity in modern cars is unnecessary. It would expose that the technology isn't for you, it's for them. For planned obsolescence, for subscription services, for data harvesting. In 1976, Volkswagen created something revolutionary, the Golf GTI. It wasn't the first hot hatch, but it perfected the formula. Lightweight at 110 kilograms, simple engine with 1.6 liters fuel injection, 110 horsepower. Democratic pricing, affordable for working people. It created an entire segment that still dominates Europe today. The Mk1 GTI had 37 switches and buttons total. Every single one had one function. The heating? 3 sliders. Temperature, fan speed, direction. That's it. Perfect after 40 years. The modern Golf? 117 different controls, most hidden in touchscreen menus. According to customer complaints documented by Which, the infotainment system is the #1 warranty claim. Let's expose the real economics. VW could build a Mk1 GTI replica today. The platform exists. It's called MQB. Strip out the electronics, use analog gauges, mechanical controls. The production cost would actually be lower than a modern Golf, about 18,000 euros versus 22,000 euros for a standard Golf 8. But they can't sell it. Why? Because without electronics, they lose recurring revenue. No software updates at 89 euros each. No subscription services for heated seats. Yes, that's real. No data to sell to insurance companies. A simple Golf GTI would be more profitable per unit, but disaster for the business model. The market is desperate for this car. The French company Retrofit builds new Mk1 GTIs from restored shells with modern drivetrains. They charge 65,000 euros and have a 2-year waiting list. Volkswagen sees this. They know the demand exists, but admitting simple is better would undermine 20 years of progress propaganda. The W140 S-Class was the last Mercedes built without cost constraints. Development took 10 years and 2.5 billion euros. Engineers were told to build the best car possible, period. The result was the 1991's S-Class, a car so over-engineered that many consider it the greatest sedan ever built. Let me explain what over-engineering meant. The W140 had double-glazed windows, not for noise, but because they could. The doors closed with bank vault precision because they used aerospace-grade seals. The electrical system had backup circuits for backup circuits. One owner reported driving 100,000 kilometers with a failed alternator. The redundant systems kept working. Those 127 buttons I mentioned, each one was tested for 500,000 presses. Each had its own circuit, its own fuse, and its own diagnostic code. If your seat heater failed, only your seat heater failed. Today's S-Class? One software crash can disable everything from navigation to climate control. And according to our data, the modern S-Class has been recalled 14 times between 2021 and 2025. To build a W140 today would require reversing 30 years of cost cutting. The double pane glass alone adds 8,000 euros. The mechanical door locks, yes, mechanical, unhackable, eternal, would cost 12,000 euros to engineer for modern standards. The total? 380,000 euros production cost, meaning a retail price over 500,000 euros. Mercedes knows wealthy buyers would pay this. Rolls-Royce and Bentley prove the ultra-luxury market exists, but Mercedes can't build it because it would expose their modern S-Class as what it is, a compromised cost-cut shadow of what Mercedes once meant. The W140 getting 30 years of reliable service while the new S-Class gets recalled every 6 months? That comparison would destroy the brand. The original Mini, built from 1959 to 2000, was a packaging miracle. At just 3 meters long and weighing 635 kilos, it could carry 4 adults. It won the Monte Carlo Rally. It became British culture on wheels. And it did it all with 34 horsepower and a top speed of 120 kilometers per hour. The Mini proved that intelligent design beats brute force. The transverse engine layout, wheels pushed to the corners, minimal overhangs. Every millimeter had purpose. The controls were hilariously simple. 3 gauges, 8 switches, 1 steering wheel. The heating was a valve that let engine heat into the cabin. Crude, but eternal. BMW bought Mini and turned it into everything the original wasn't. The modern Mini weighs 1,400 kilograms, more than double. It's 4 meters long, not Mini at all. It has 78 electronic control units. The base model cost €28,000 versus €11,000 with inflation adjustment for the original. Here's the scandal. BMW could build a true Mini successor. Take their i3 carbon fiber technology, build a 600 kilogram city car, use the motorcycle engine from their R1250, 100 horsepower, bulletproof, reliable. Price it at €15,000 and still profit. The development costs? Maybe €500 million, nothing for BMW. But they won't, because the modern Mini is a gold mine of upselling. Customization options generate 35% profit margins. The Union Jack taillights? €800 for LED strips that cost €30 to make. A base Mini configured with typical options reaches €40,000. That's the business model. Sell fake heritage at luxury prices. The original Audi Quattro from 1980 changed everything. All-wheel drive in a performance car. Turbocharging for the masses. Rally success that transformed Audi from also-ran to icon. It was complicated for its time, but brilliantly simple by today's standards. Mechanical everything. No computers deciding how to split torque. The Quattro's center differential was a masterpiece of mechanical engineering. It could be locked manually, giving the driver total control. The turbocharged 5-cylinder engine made unique sounds that became legendary. The whole car weighed 1,290 kilos despite the all-wheel drive system. Audi recently considered a Heritage Edition Quattro. The engineering study revealed devastating truths. That mechanical center diff? Illegal now. Stability control must be able to override driver inputs. The mechanical locking mechanism? Not permitted. Electronic control required. The weight after adding mandatory safety systems? 1,650 kilos minimum. But the real tragedy is the 5-cylinder engine. Audi spent €45 million developing a modern 5-cylinder that meets emission standards. It works, but it needs a particular filter that muffles the signature sound. It needs cylinder deactivation that ruins the rhythm. The character that defined the Quattro, gone. The theoretical modern Quattro would cost €145,000 to produce, sell for €200,000, and satisfy nobody. The originals are now worth €150,000 to €400,000 because people want the mechanical experience, not a computerized simulation. Audi knows this but can't acknowledge that progress went backwards. The Beetle was the most successful car design ever. 21.5 million built over 65 years. The same basic design sold from 1938 to 2003. It was Adolf Hitler's vision of motorizing Germany, but it became the hippie icon, the Mexican taxi, the global symbol of simplicity. The Beetle's genius was reduction. Air-cooled engine, no radiator, no coolant, no water pump. Rear engine, no complex drive shaft. Body on-frame construction meant easy repairs. 4 bolts held the fenders on. The entire engine could be removed in 20 minutes with basic tools. VW killed the original Beetle in 2003 and replaced it with the new Beetle, the Golf with retro styling. It was everything wrong with modern heritage cars. Front engine, water-cooled, zero serviceability. It failed and was replaced by another failure. VW gave up in 2019. But here's what VW discovered when they studied a true Beetle revival. It would sell millions. Their research showed demand for 400,000 units annually at €18,000. The profit per car would be €3,000. Terrible by modern standards, but €1.2 billion total profit. Shareholders said no. Why? Because selling a simple, eternal car would cannibalize sales of complex, disposable cars with higher margins. The Mexico factory that built Beetles until 2003 still exists. The tooling was preserved. VW could restart production for about €200 million investment. They'd recoup it all in about 6 months. But they won't, because it would prove that cars peaked in simplicity decades ago. The Peugeot 205 GTI from 1984 to 1994 was driving purity. It weighed 880 kilograms. The 1.9-litre engine made 130 horsepower. No power steering, no ABS, no traction control, just perfect weight distribution, telepathic steering, and lift-off oversteer that taught a generation how to really drive. The 205 GTI had 8 gauges and 22 switches. Everything was where you expected it. The driving position was perfect because humans designed it, not computers. The shifter throw was short and mechanical. The clutch talked to you. Every input had immediate, honest feedback. Peugeot had tried 3 times to recapture the 205 GTI magic. The 206 GTI was too heavy, the 207 GTI was numb, the 208 GTI was electronic. Each generation got further from what made the 205 special. The current 208? It's a good car, but it weighs 1,200 kilos and costs 35,000 euros. Internal Peugeot documents leaked in 2022 showed they studied building a 205 heritage, stripped down a 208 to 950 kilograms, used the older, simpler 1.6 turbo without hybrid assistance, mechanical steering, manual gearbox only. The cost? They could build it for 22,000 euros and sell for 32,000 euros profitably. Marketing killed it. They said young buyers wouldn't understand it, and old buyers would compare it to used 205 GTI selling for 40,000 euros. But the real reason? Stellantis makes more money selling one 45,000 euro 308 PSI hybrid than 3 simple GTIs. The spreadsheet wins. Driving loses. The Volvo 240, produced from 1974 to 1993, was safety before safety was mandatory. Volvo gave away their seatbelt patent to save lives. They pioneered crumple zones. The 240 was built to protect families, and it did, for decades. Many have passed 500,000 kilometers, some have exceeded 1 million. The 240's construction was deliberate overkill. The B230F engine was understressed, making 114 horsepower from 2.3 litres. It could have made 200, but Volvo wanted it to last forever. The body used more steel than necessary. The bumpers could withstand 8 km/h impacts with 0 damage. Modern cars suffer 5,000 euros of sensor damage at 3 km/h. Volvo considered a 240 Tribute Edition in 2020 for their anniversary. The study was shocking. To build a 240 with modern safety would require adding only 3,000 euros of equipment. The original was that far ahead. But to meet emissions, 15,000 euros. To add mandatory electronics, 8,000 euros. Total production cost, 45,000 euros. That's still reasonable. Volvo could sell a modern 240 for 60,000 euros and profit. The XC90 proves people will pay Volvo prices, but here's why they won't. The 240 would last 30 years. And Volvo's business model requires you to lease a new one every 3 years. They literally can't afford to build cars that good anymore. The Alfa Romeo 75, or Milano in North America, from 1985 to 1992 was the last true Alfa. Rear-wheel drive, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, trans-axle gearbox, inboard rear brakes. It was engineering poetry with an Italian accent. The twin-spark engine sounded like heaven and required worship-level maintenance. The 75 had character flaws that became features. The driving position was odd but perfect once learned. The dashboard was a scattered constellation of beautiful gauges. The build quality varied. Modern cars were terrible. Wednesday cars were perfect, but every single one had soul. Alfa Romeo is now part of Stellantis, building platform-shared crossovers. The Giulia was supposed to revive the spirit but got watered down by committees. An internal proposal for a 75 Tribute was created in 2021. Rear drive platform from the Giulia, naturally aspirated V6, manual gearbox only, analog gauges. The business case was solid. 35,000 euros production cost, 55,000 euros retail, projected 10,000 annual sales. That's 200 million euros profit. But Stellantis killed it because it would outsell the 70,000 euro Giulia Quadrifoglio and embarrass the entire modern lineup by being more desirable while simpler. Here's what the automotive industry doesn't want you to understand. They could build every one of these cars tomorrow. The technology exists, the demand exists, the profit margins would be acceptable, but 3 forces prevent it, and they're darker than you think. First, shareholders demand growth, not sustainability. A car that lasts 30 years is a disaster for quarterly earnings. The Mercedes W123 that refuses to die? That's a nightmare scenario for modern business. They need you buying or leasing every 3 to 5 years. Planned obsolescence isn't a conspiracy theory, it's the business model. Second, regulations written by lobbyists make simplicity illegal. You can't build a car without 47 different electronic nannies. The EU mandates intelligent speed assistance, emergency lane keeping, driver monitoring. Each system adds cost, weight, and failure points. But here's the secret. Car manufacturers lobbied for these regulations because they create barriers to entry and force complexity that justifies higher prices. Third, and most sinister, data. Your modern car generates 25 gigabytes of data per hour. Location, speed, acceleration, braking, even eye movement and heart rate in some models. This data is worth billions. A simple car with mechanical controls generates no data. That's lost revenue worth more than the car itself. Tesla showed the industry that cars are now software platforms. Every manufacturer followed. The BMW heated seat subscription that caused outrage? That's the future. You won't own features. You'll rent them. And when the car is 10 years old and BMW stops supporting the software, it becomes worthless. Forced obsolescence through software abandonment. The cars we've discussed today represent more than nostalgia. They represent a fork in the road where the industry chose profit over people, complexity over reliability, surveillance over privacy. Every modern car is a compromise between what engineers could build and what accountants will allow. But there's hope, and it comes from an unexpected place: China. Companies like Aura and Wuling are building simple, affordable cars because their market demands it. The Wuling Mini EV sells for 4,000 euros in China. It is basic, but it works. If Chinese manufacturers bring that philosophy to Europe, and they're trying, it could force European manufacturers to remember what cars are supposed to be: tools for freedom, not subscription services. The used market tells the truth. A 1990 Mercedes W124 in good condition costs more than a 2015 C-Class. A clean Peugeot 205 GTI sells for more than a new 208 GT. The market is screaming that we went backwards, but the industry pretends not to hear. Not because we can't build them, but because building them would expose the lie of modern automotive progress. Every touchscreen that replaces buttons, every sensor that fails after warranty, every software update that breaks something that worked. It's all intentional. The automotive industry discovered they make more selling you complexity that breaks than simplicity that lasts. They make more money harvesting your data than selling you a car. They make more money on finance and subscriptions than manufacturing. Your grandfather's Mercedes that still runs after 40 years isn't a miracle. It's what happens when engineers are allowed to engineer instead of being overruled by MBAs. The tragedy isn't that we can't build these cars anymore. The tragedy is that we choose not to. But you have power. Every time someone buys a 30-year-old W124 instead of a new car, it's a vote for quality over quarterly earnings. Every restored 205 GTI is a middle finger to planned obsolescence. The used market is the only honest market left, and it's sending a clear message: we want our cars back. The industry will eventually listen, not because they want to, but because they'll have to. When Chinese manufacturers start selling simple, reliable cars at reasonable prices, European manufacturers will suddenly discover that simplicity is possible again. But until then, protect those old cars. Maintain them, cherish them, because they're not just machines. They're reminders of when the automotive industry still had a soul.